Hello, welcome and thank you for being with us today in our Pure Esperanza World El Hogar experience. This event is becoming a conscious self-leader. And if you're interested in how to elevate your leadership skills and development, we ask you to enjoy this time with our dear leaders themselves, Swan and Elizabeth Terry, who will be sharing with you a little bit of their work. Take it over, Ross.
Okay, thank you, Esperanza. Right, it's about what we're going to be talking about is being a conscious leader of self. Basically, it's how you lead yourself. It's not about leading others. Unless you lead yourself, you can't lead others anyway. Well, not effectively anyway. So being a conscious leader of self, what does that actually mean? It means staying true to your inner self, your authenticity. It comes from within you. Being conscious of your surroundings and just being yourself. It's regularly reflecting where you are in the world and the impact you may have. Now, even if you don't want to have an impact at all, that's still an impact. It's just very small. But anyway, look, most people I know, who are conscious leaders anyway, they want to be conscious, there again, that's the word, of the impact they're making to the world and to others. And it's being disciplined to be able to do that. It's fine wanting to do that, it's being disciplined to do it. Next. So it's also about and it's about understanding the impact of behaviours, which I said, and on others. It's being balanced in those behaviours and perspectives. It's your complementary behaviours, which I'll talk about in a minute. It's being conscious of that impact again, as I said. And I'll keep saying it because that's exactly what we're talking about. And it's looking for the value you add to people and to the world. I've never known anyone all my years of coaching that actually thought that they didn't want to add any value, or they didn't want to add any value to people or anything. And I guess there's people out there, but certainly not people who are interested in being coached and being and wanting to be a better version of themselves. So how do you want to be described? And so it's when you're reflecting, it's how you want to be described as a person. As a leader, as a partner, and so on. And it's not about, when you're there reflecting, it's not about, I want to be this type of person. It's too vague. It's about specific behaviours. About exactly what have you got to do to be the person that you want to be. That comes me to a theory, the paradox theory by Dr. Dan Harrison of Harrison Assessments. And the paradox simply means is the result of integrating two seemingly contradictory behaviours that both contribute to an individual's success. So it's the contradictions, the paradox, and yet they're so important to be intertwined, the yin and the yang. And individuals who are more balanced in those paradoxes are more likely to have a positive impact on others with their talent, with their being. Next. So understanding my behaviour, why do I react that way? That's the question you got to ask yourself, because you've got to understand yourself. You've got to reflect consciously about yourself. So first, as I mentioned, let's say, why do I behave the way I do? Well, first is the behavioural paradox theory by Dr. Dan Harrison, which basically means in theory, is your strength can be your weakness, or your weakness can be your strength, for that matter. And I'll give an example of that in a minute. The other areas of influencing behaviours is based on your programming from your environment over all the years of your life. Probably you could be in the mother's womb and you're being influenced by being programmed by the environment around you. You're also influenced by the consequences of past behaviours. You behave in such a way and it ended up a very negative experience, you probably don't do that again. See, that's a simple example. But in essence, when you're looking at yourself and trying to be consciously having an impact or being the person you want to be, more to the point, it's about understanding your behaviours. Why do I do that? Or how can I best be the best I can be? Or be the best I can be. That's the same word. What am I saying? Let's look at an example. Now, an example's, I think the easiest one to give is communication. We all communicate. No question about that. So let me explain about the paradox here. So what you're trying to do is build cooperative relationships with others, be respectful of others, self-esteem, yet authentic in your own communication. That's when you're communicating with people. Now, what that means is, on one end of the spectrum, you can be frank. That's the tendency to be straightforward, direct to the point, and forthright, which in theory is an aggressive behaviour. And then the other end of the spectrum is diplomacy. That's the tendency to state things in a very tactful manner. And that's more of a passive behaviour. But that's the yin and the yang. One, you're very blunt. You can be very blunt, but you're frank. You want to tell someone what they need to hear. On the other end, diplomacy is, I've got to be very tactful. Now, either one is a strength. That's the paradox. But then how do I balance that? That's the key. And in your reflecting, you've got to look at that, because people will get that, oh, I'm a frank person. Hey, what a great thing. That's my way. That's strength. It is. But how do you balance that against the complementary behaviour within the paradox theory? Next. So you need to have frankness and diplomacy at the same time. So exactly what you are, then think about this in your reflection, in your reflective mood, right? Ask yourself, do you tend to say what you think needs to be said without any tact or diplomacy? In other words, you just blurt it out and tell someone, well, I've told them, that's good. That's it, that's their problem now, but I've told them. One, or do you tend to be tactful without being sufficiently direct and don't say what needs to be said? In other words, you withhold what you're going to say because you don't want to upset anyone. Or do you just avoid having conversations that you feel will be difficult? You just don't even get into the conversation because you know it'll be difficult. And that could be difficult in two ways. If you're a very blunt person, it could be difficult because all you're doing is totally upsetting them. The other way, it's difficult for you you know what you've got to say, but you're not saying it. So you just waffle. So the key is, or ask yourself, do you say what needs to be said while trying to be respectful and constructive? That could be different. So next. So to be productive, it's all about the balance. It's not about an either or, strength and weakness. It's trying to be as balanced between telling someone that needs to hear something, at the same time being diplomatic with the way you're saying it. Now, that doesn't have to be 50-50, but it has to be as close as you can get to being balanced in that effort. Next. So, what's counterproductive? So, if you're too frank, for example, it's more of an aggressive behaviour. So you're just blunt. And all you're doing generally is upsetting people. In fact, matter of fact, I say more than generally. Some people like to be told what needs to be said. They go, oh, I'm okay. But really, they probably aren't. They just say they are. Depends how blunt you were, I guess, how animated you were in the conversation. And the key is you can't, as I said, you can't be too diplomatic. So you've got to, because people need to hear what they need to hear. It's about how do I be diplomatic when I'm blunt? Well, the key is, or vice versa. It's how I need to say something, but at the same time, it's just training yourself to be constructive with that, not destructive. You see, yes, you're giving an advantage for someone, for example, that you've told them what needs to be said. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any impact, really. The only impact is to upset them emotionally. It doesn't actually, because they're more now thinking about the emotion and the upset about than actually what you said in what you were trying to achieve with what you said. And I guess some people do, but I don't know too many good leaders who openly want to go around and upsetting people. There are some, but they're not really conscious leaders. So if you want to do what you need to be doing, say what needs to be said, the key is you need to practice diplomacy, or vice versa. If you're very diplomatic, you need to practice to say things to people that need to be said. That's all. It's not changing one or the other. It's actually integrating both behaviours. That's being conscious. That's being conscious of the impact you have in the world. So you practice it. So next. So you're looking at forthright diplomacy. Next slide, thanks. And that's the need to deliver the honest message by the way that supports the person and doesn't deflate them. So in essence, what I'm saying is just be conscious of your leadership. Just be conscious of your impact. You're not doing things to make everyone else, helping everyone else too much that you don't help yourself. You're not doing that. All you're trying to do is if I've got to get a message to a person, for example, back to just communication, if I've got to give a message to someone, then I want that message to have impact. Now, saying it blunt doesn't have the impact because the people are more conscious about the upset than the actual message that they needed to have to do what they've got to do. It's saying in a way that has the most impact for that message. So therefore, you need that diplomacy. So that's what I'm getting at. And when you look at paradoxical behaviour, there's about 12 leadership behaviours or self-leadership behaviours that have a paradox. And that's a half-day session to go through those and start to practice it. I chose this one because it's something we all do and have to do is communicate. And the key is when you want to communicate, you want that message to be right and you want the impact to be right. That's being conscious of the impact that you give. So one last thing I want to say here is, next slide, thanks, is that I want to leave you this one thing, is that the question I want you to ask yourself is, what impact do I want to make? In other words, how do you want to be described as a person, as a parent, as a partner? And that list can go on and on. Now, how do you want to be described as that person? In other words, what impact do you want to make with people? Now, I've asked this question many times over the years coaching. What impact do you want to have as a leader? And it's funny, I've never had anyone say that I want to be known as an idiot, but I want to be known as the worst boss that everyone's ever had. They always say nice things. But that's the challenge for you, being a conscious leader. If you're not a conscious leader, you just say those things and just, I guess, hope that that's the way people will describe you. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. A conscious leader sees where and sees themselves being the person that they want to be described as. So not only see themselves, then work towards being that person. And that's not person who wants to bend and go with the flow of the breeze of everyone around them. That's being the person they want to be, because that's how they want to be described. That's their legacy in life. So it's from them. So then all they have to do is work out the behaviours that they need to do 365 days of the year, 7 days a week, in order for someone to describe them that way. That's being conscious of the impact that you're going to make. Now, some of those behaviours can be difficult, but hey, this is the way you want to be described. Either you change that description or you do what you need to do to be described the way that your heart wants you to be described. That's it. Do that, be conscious of it, reflect, and ask yourself, did I spend time today in uplifting myself and others? Or did I actually bring people down today? Did I have a negative impact on people? That's consciously reflecting of your impact. And be honest with yourself. And that's listening to your inner voice, not your head. It's listening to your inner voice, because the inner voice tells the truth. So on that note, I'll leave you today and hand it over to Liz. But just do that exercise and keep asking yourself and working on the behaviours to be the person that you want to be. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ross. Thanks so much, Ross. Before we jump into you, Liz, Ross, can you just share a little bit about your background?
Oh, maybe, sorry, I just flew in it earlier on. Yes, well, I've been coaching executives for 25 years in different parts of the world, and I'm more of a behavioural-based coach, I suppose, and I'm trying to help people with their behaviours and trying to, there again, help them be conscious leaders of self.
Thanks so much, Ross.
Thank you.
Gives us so much to think about, so much to reflect on. Thank you. And now, Liz, if you'd share a little bit about yourself, and then we're ready to go. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Esperanza, for just being here and experiencing the metaverse, and Ross, of course, for providing that initial introduction into self-leadership. So my background is in training and development. I've been in that all my life. It's my passion. I have been trained in neuro-linguistic programming. Some of you may know it as NLP. And that's really, I describe it as the toolkit for your mind. It's how you can get the kind of results that you want in your life through the power of your mind. Your mind is very powerful. It can be your friend, but it can also be your enemy. And so how can you get it to be your friend and really work with it in a way that you can experience life that is enjoyable, that's happy, that you feel like you are satisfied? How many of us really feel that way? And it's really about learning how to use your mind in an appropriate way. And of course, that comes down to initially self-awareness, because we can't possibly change what we're not aware of. So that's, for me, is step one. And in my practice as a positive intelligence coach, and in fact in using my tools in the industry programming, this is the initial step that everyone has to take. How do we know what we want to change if we don't, as Ross said, we don't ask ourselves some self-reflective questions and really be in the present moment and experience ourselves as we truly are. Now, research has shown that when we become more aware of our thoughts, our feelings, or habitual patterns, because when we talk about habits, those things are just, yes, thank you for changing the slide. Those things are really unconscious things that we do. So we're not aware of them. But when we become more self-aware, it allows us to choose so that we can shift from being reactive into being responsive. And that, of course, is where real change can happen. PQ, positive intelligence, as well as NLP and other tools really helps us to do that. So on the screen before you, you will see a few, icons there. And this is really describing much of how we have tended over the period that we have certainly lived to use our more, we call them saboteur tendencies. Those tendencies that really reside solely in, muscle and brawn, totally involved in rational and logical thinking, where our world is all about power and control and achievement. And so we are seeing in the leadership context right now what is happening in our world. And many of us are questioning, how do we change that? What is it that we need to do in order to have a different model of leadership? A leadership that is based in, I would say, more heart-based. It's how do we marry the mind and the heart, the best of both worlds. So I'd like to just ask you in the metaverse to look around the space that we are in now and notice something that maybe you hadn't seen or focused on before. It could be an item and notice its color, its texture, and just sort of hyper-focus on that for a moment and breathe into the moment. Just be really, really fully present and focus on that object. Notice its color, its shape, its texture. Is there any sounds that you're hearing? Now, ask yourself, how often do we rush past these details in life, in real life? It's probably, a great deal of the time. In fact, it is said that we have 60,000 thoughts daily, and the majority of those thoughts are either about the past, usually worrying about something that has happened in the past, or we're thinking about the future, and often that future is anxiety producing. And so we're not fully in the present moment. And in the present is where we have the opportunity for change. So it is a way of thinking, moving ourselves from thinking in what we call saboteur thinking, which is survival thinking. So it's moving us away from the thoughts that are generally surrounding the survival instinct, that is fight, flight, or freeze responses, which are instinctive and which, of course, are important. They were very important to us, decades, thousands, millennia of years ago when we were living out in the wide open in the wilds and had to protect ourselves. And so this was a way of ensuring that we survived, the survival of the fittest. But we now are in a different world. And what we really need now is to be able to engage more heart-based thinking. Thinking that is free from our saboteur masks. And saboteurs, just let me give you a definition. It's really negative mental habits that tend to hijack your mind. And sage thinking, which is very much more around heart-based thinking, is around accessing your inner calm, your creativity, what we would call your resourceful self. Sometimes the intuitive self, the self that is more deeply grounded in empathy, both self-empathy and empathy for others. The curious and open mind, what some may call the growth mindset instead of the fixed mindset, which tends to be a saboteur thinking. So how do we, shift ourselves? And let's look a little bit more deeply now, Esperanza, if you could change the slide for me into what are some of the ways that we tend to get hijacked by the saboteur thinking. Next slide, please. Right. So I've selected just 5 of these, let's call them avatars, that tend to hijack us. The first one on the left is the judge. This is what we call the master controller of all of our saboteur thinking. It's the one that tends to jump in right away. So the judge judges, first of all, ourselves. The judge judges other people. And I'm sure we've experienced both of those. And the third is situations. So, for example, if we have a challenge in our life, there is a loss of a job, for example, then we tend to immediately jump in and we say, oh my God, this is such a terrible thing that has happened. But we have to learn how to think of it differently with our sage brain. And so, for example, we'll be thinking of, well, what opportunity does this open for me? Maybe I hated my job, and this is actually the trigger, the way I can springboard into a new opportunity for myself. But how often do we not sit in the judgment seat? And this can be exceedingly debilitating both for ourselves as well as for other people in our lives. Right? So that's the judge. The second one there to the right is the avoider. The paper bag over the head, the ostrich, with the head in the sand. The avoider is some tendencies that we have to, for example, avoid conflict. Now, conflict can be magical. It can also be soul-destroying. It just really depends on how you respond to it. So the avoider is someone who is going to always want to keep the peace. And you might say, well, that sounds like a really good thing, keep a peacekeeper. But the truth is that when you consistently avoid confronting in an assertive but kind manner situations or things or people in your life that are not working, then we actually can build up a lot of resentment. And the other person doesn't really understand when one day, it's like a fuse has been lit and we blow up. So the avoider tendency can really backfire. The third one there is the controller. And the controller is, as you see, the graphic there says, like the puppeteer, the micromanager, that aspect of some of us that because of fear-based thinking, we want to have our fingers in every pie. We want to be able to control all the strings. Why? Because at the base of it is really that we fear losing control. So it's either we're in control or we're not. Then there's no middle ground here. And of course, if you are a leader in an organization, this can be very destructive to your team because it cuts off development, delegation of responsibility. You want to hold on to everything. The fourth one that is there is the restless. The restless is that individual who's always going after the next best thing, the next shiny, bright, new object. and a lot of energy, of course. Restless people tend to have a lot of that, and they're super motivated. But finishing things and really staying the course and getting through both the highs and the lows in order to achieve the ends can be very elusive. And of course, finally, there is the hyperachiever, always going after the award at the end. So much so that if I don't achieve the goals that I want, then it affects my sense of my own self-worth. My value is intrinsically intertwined with the achievement of that goal. And when I don't get it, then it's death to me, which of course is a really dangerous position to be in. So these are 5 of the 9 that we have within the PQ framework, which really helps you to identify. There's an assessment that you do, and it helps you to identify what are your top tendencies. Because again, we can only change what we are aware of. So the next slide. So what we need to do is to build new neural connections, because our default programming is in the fight, flight, or freeze response. That's our default, right? So when we meet on difficult situations, then we go immediately, instinctively into those tendencies. But the great thing that we have discovered is that we have neuroplasticity. It means our connections are remakeable. We can renew connections. We can make new connections because we have trillions of neurons in our brain. And we can simply create a new circuitry, if we will, and that gives us access to different responses. So in order to do that, we have to build our mental muscles. And so there are 3 things, 3 very important mental muscles that we need to build. The first one is to identify our saboteur thinking. We need to be able to label. We need to say, yes, that's my avoider coming up. That's my controller. I'm trying to take care of everything when I should be delegating, for example. That's the first muscle. We need to be able to identify our saboteurs. The second is to be able to intercept the pattern, interrupt it, and at the same time to energize our sage brain so that we can have access to a different way of thinking. And then finally, to energize and access the kind of sage thinking and the qualities that will enable us to respond differently to situations. Some of those would be involved in empathy, I mentioned the explorer, the curious nature that we have with coming with an open mind, being able to navigate challenges with our values, being able to innovate, use our imagination and creativity, and then being able to activate. So let's do an exercise here that we use in our positive intelligence program to help interrupt that saboteur thinking and to energize our sage brain. It's a kind of mindfulness activity, which we call a PQ rep. Just like when you go to the gym and you lift weights in order to build your physical muscles, we ask that you do PQ reps, which enable you over time. And I heard Ross speak about discipline, right? And practice. And so these are practices and techniques that help you to build your mental muscles. So, are you ready to do a mindfulness practice? Let's start. So I invite you to sit really straight and tall in your chair and feel your spine on the back of the chair. And as you take a deep breath in and release it, Just become conscious of the weight of your body in that chair at all the points where your body touches the chair. Thighs, your buttocks, maybe your back. Just feel the weight of your body on that chair. Then move down to your feet on the floor. Just feel the weight of your feet on the floor, each one separately. Your right foot, and then your left. And as you're sitting there, see if you can find all 10 of your very beautiful little toes, each and every one of them. Just reach up now and bring your thumb and your forefinger together with such acute attention that you can feel every ridge, every indentation, that pattern on both of your fingers. And then just rub all 10 of your fingers together, doing the same thing. And then rub your palms up and down, feeling the texture of your skin and noticing the temperature. Are your palms warm or cool? Are they dry or damp? And now bringing your attention to the sounds. What are the sounds that you hear in the furthest away distance? Just notice what those sounds are. And then come closer in and notice those sounds. Maybe in the room that you're in. And then closer still. See if you can hear your own breathing. And as you breathe in, notice the temperature of the air as it passes through your nostrils. And then the temperature as you exhale. Just do that a couple times. Notice any differences. And now just take a last deep breath in. Holding for a moment at the top. Exhale. And open your eyes. And welcome back. So, how did that feel? Are you feeling more relaxed, centered perhaps, calm? Yeah, pretty sure that you are. So that was the experience of what we call a PQ rep. And when these are done on a consistent basis, especially when you notice that you are being hijacked by one of your saboteurs, then this helps to interrupt that pattern and to energize your sage brain. Done over a period of time, and our program is actually 7 weeks. What this does is to solidify your new way of thinking and help you to embed that new neural connection and new responses, which are more sage-like, into your day-to-day life and into your leadership. So that's it for me. I thank you very much for listening in. It's been a pleasure being here in the Metaverse in Elogar.
Oh, thank you so much, Liz. That was really wonderful. I think those kinds of PQ reps and exercises that people can do to help them bring more awareness into their daily lives especially if they're in leadership positions in organizations. There's so much here, so much information, both Liz and Ross, both of you that shared. And I just feel like for those individuals that are working in leadership or just in the true sense of self-leadership each and every day, because we all encounter experiences where we can't control the environment, and we all find ourselves in situations where the environment is absolutely starting to control us. And it's really wonderful to have different exercises that we can rely on and that we can work inwardly in, and raises the consciousness. And the thing about that is that it's not just then us, because it begins to affect the environment that we're in, and those kinds of shifts become more accessible as other people feel the experience and of those modeling that for them.
Yes,
so
we call that saboteur and sage contagion. So it can be saboteur contagion, or it can be sage contagion. And so when we become more conscious, then in fact,
absolutely.
We
and
infect
I think
other
Ross,
people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think, Ross, you were mentioning the same kind of thing. That's the impact then that we get to have. And I know that there are probably a lot of questions out here that people may have. The best way to reach out to you that I know of, but certainly feel free to share anything else you'd like to, is through our community page on pureesperanza.org. Is there any last comments that you would like to make, Ross?
No, just the last comment is just be conscious of your impact and go through some of the exercise that Liz mentioned, but always having the discipline to stop and reflect.
Beautiful.
We often forget it. Just have the discipline to stop and reflect.
Wonderful.
Yes.
And Liz?
Yes, for me, I think I certainly agree with Ross's comments, and I would add that it's the power of choice, because that's how we recognize that we have our own internal locus of control. That's it, our ability to choose. And sometimes we're so much on automatic pilot that we don't recognize what we're doing. We do things unconsciously, and this is all about recognizing our power within and to apply that power in a conscious way so that we uplift ourselves and, of course, everyone with whom we come into contact.
That's it, Liz. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you so much, both Ross and Liz, for your time, for your passion, and the commitment, dedication you both have shared in your service and coaching others. Thank you so much. We hope you'll connect with us more through our website, where you'll find many educational resources like this and so many others, including our community collaborator page, where Ross and Liz can be found, and their services, our online shop and holistic products, and relevant, insightful blogs. Look, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, LinkedIn, and our X, Twitter, social media handles. Keep finding all your consciousness connections here with us at Pure Esperanza. Until next time, thanks, everyone. Thank you both.
Wake up, blind, chase another crown. Gold medal dreams can't slow down. Smiling big, but I'm stressed and deep. Success is sweet, but I can't sleep. Mirror say you look the part. Inside, still doubt in my heart. Flash the grin, hit that mark, but joy had gone before the spark. I'm the hyper achiever, top of the game. Living for likes and chasing fame. Every win feel nice for a minute or two, but then I ask, what more can I do? Never enough, gotta be the best. Even resting gives me stress. Oh God. Can someone tell me why this ladder don't reach the sky? I dress the part, I shine real bright, but inside, pressure busting pipe. Friends say slow, but I say fast, 'cause failure, nah, I can't come last. Hyperachiever on a mission, but is peace part of that ambition? Time for cool, time for breathe. You don't need gold, just self-belief. I'm the hyperachiever, top of the game, living for likes and chasing fame. Every win feel nice for a minute or two, but then I ask, what more can I do? Never enough, gotta be the best. Even resting gives me stress. Oh gosh, can someone tell me why this ladder don't reach the sky? I dress the part, I shine real bright, but inside, pressure busting pipe. Friends say slow, but I say fast, 'cause failure, nah, I can't come last. Hyperachiever on a mission, but is peace part of that ambition? Time for cool, time for breathe. You don't need gold, just self-belief.